Colour is an extremely valuable, important aspect to life, and we don't give it enough credit. It's used to relax the eye and paint beautiful scenes. It's used as a scientific instrument to move humanity forwards. It's used in marketing to subconsciously change the way we think, and it shapes our everyday lives without us even realising it, which is why it's so unsatisfying, so irritating when it's used in the wrong ways. I'm sure right now you're shielding your eyes or cleaning up the lunch you had an hour ago. In fact, I should probably fix that. But now it looks like an old photo album. Everything blends in too well. Very little contrast at all. This is getting out of hand, but thankfully today we're focusing on palettes. How do you make your builds stand out without making them look over-textured? How do you start? What even is a palette? Well, let's get right into the video. And once again, I have made a list of all of the different steps you can use to improve your palette one at a time. I've gone through the same build. This is exactly the same shape, exactly the same build. I've just edited it slightly, one by one through each step, and I'll take you through how to improve the palettes one by one. Now, if you don't know, the most common form of palettes is like this. This is how builders typically shape out their palettes. I'm not a huge fan of doing this. I typically don't do this, but it is often a nice way of visualizing your palette, seeing how many different colors you really have and how well your build looks without actually having to see the build itself. And as you can see with this palette, we have one, I suppose you could count this as a second color as well, with the blue and the white. But yeah, we just have one colour for the most part. It's a very monochromatic build, lots of brown and nothing else really. Everything blends in too well, nothing stands out, and there's absolutely no contrast. This is bad, you don't want this, so we're going to move on very quickly. And as you can see, everything stands out a whole lot more straight away. As you can see, we've given it a bit of a beard, we've changed the colour of the foundations from a brown stripped dark oak to a lighter grey andesite colour. And we've changed the trim of the roof to stone bricks, which separates the interior of the roof with the wall. As you can see here, the trim of the roof just blended in with the wall and everything just like one big mass. But now this separates it off even more, making it look nice and separated from each layer. So, once again, we are just widening the palette, adding more colours rather than adding more texture for now, and that's probably what you should prioritise first. For the next step, once again, we are just widening it even more and adding a yellowy, smooth sandstone colour. Now, the main problem with this build here is that the framing, particularly the horizontal beams, blends in way too much with the walls. This one just makes it contrast even more, but you can really use anything. You don't have to use smooth sandstone. Lots of people like to use white wool because it symbolises some sort of medieval house. You could use some form of terracotta, you could use bricks, anything really, but I like to use smooth sandstone because it's a nice, smooth, very nice and colourful, vibrant texture. But once again, this just separates every single bit, adding contrast, and this already looks so much better compared to this one. And now we're widening the palette by just one more block. Now, I would recommend not having too many more blocks than this, maybe a maximum of 7 different colours. Because while one colour looks a bit bland, a bit too boring and monochromatic, too many colours can look a bit overwhelming and can kind of reduce the quality of your houses. So I would suggest between 4 and 7 different colours without adding too many more after that. But as you can see, I have just changed the colour of the roof to a completely different colour. This house here looks absolutely fine, but adding even more contrast makes it blend in a lot less with its surroundings. Imagine seeing this in a big city. This would stand out among loads of roofs that look like this, which is why lots of builders often create different palettes for different houses in cities and towns, because they want each house to stand out rather than look like a big congregation of houses. Now, one thing I've done in my survivor world is I've actually made it all the houses have the same palette because it's a poorer district, so it adds to the lore in that way. But for richer cities, I would definitely recommend having completely different palettes for every single house. And the final step is to just increase the height of the columns rather than the width, because we've got all the colours we want now. Now it's time to add texture. And all I'm doing is just adding some darker, some lighter, slightly different blocks into the palette and just making it look a little bit better. I've also added highlights of green here and there, sort of symbolising the rain gathering up at the bottom, making it all mossy and damp. But you don't always have to add things like that. It does add a little bit of colour, which does add a tiny bit of interest. The more colour the better, in my opinion. So yeah, there we have it. We have already done a big step from this wooden plain house here to this brick, very contrasty, very vibrant house that looks a lot better and would be a lot more noticeable in almost any surrounding, to be honest. Now I'm moving on to some other colouring techniques, mostly to do with the texturing of a wall. Now over here I have a castle wall, and what can you notice about it? Well, it's gradiating. It's not just got random blocks here and there, it's actually going from cobblestone near the bottom to a slightly lighter colour of stone here, to an even lighter stone, which is andesite, and finally ending off at a really light grey, which is light grey concrete powder. That just makes it gradient all the way up. It kind of suggests that light is hitting the top, fading near the top, or crumbling near the bottom. And it also makes sense lore-wise. The moss and the grass is growing up into the cracks, which makes more sense at the bottom. And the cobblestone is where maybe humans are walking by, or livestock are munching away at it, or even just some sort of river or erosion like that. So that makes a little more sense. But yeah, just gradients like this can really add to walls, even if it's just a very plain colour. And next up we've got a roof design, and this uses a similar design to this. It's still using gradients, but it's just a slightly different example that still works in a lot of builds. Now, don't focus on the stone bricks or the anvils, those aren't important. The main thing is the red in the middle, and this could be used for anything, but in this case it would be a roof for a house. At the bottom we have a dark maroony browny red colour, which starts darker. You could start lighter at the bottom, but for roofs that arch like this I prefer to have the dark ones at the bottom. Then you move up to a slightly lighter tone, a red nether brick I've got here, and then the lightest tone here, which is red terracotta. And as you can see from a distance, it just blends in really well. It's a nice gradient going from a darker to a lighter colour. It would stand out in any town or city, especially one with some sort of red theme all around the city, and it just ties everything together really. It's a really nice looking roof, although once again it doesn't work in every single scenario. I would expect this on more richer, grander houses. But there we have it, loads of different builds, some worse ones with palettes that don't really work too well, with some slightly better ones, and some really nice looking ones that really stand out among the surroundings. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please, as usual, leave any suggestions down below that you have for any future content on this channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.